In today's episode of ReFi Podcast, Simar and I pause and unpack what is ReFi. We take a look at the origin of this movement, the core concepts and ideas, the technology that makes it possible. But above all, we provide a resounding invitation for anyone listening who wants to do their part in this climate symphony to make a difference. I encourage you to look past the veneer that prevents most people from getting involved into crypto, which says crypto's bad for the planet, crypto's a scam, crypto's impossible to use, and recognize that there is an entire ecosystem of innovation full of talented founders, builders, and investors that recognize the power of energy-efficient blockchains as a coordination tool to transition to a different economy that addresses these challenges of climate, biodiversity, and social injustice. This has been an awesome episode to have a chat with Simar and look at some of these ideas. We wanted to provide a little bit more space to look at ReFi as a movement as it grows and evolves over time in between some of these very detailed conversations with guests about specific protocols. Hope you enjoy it, and as always, hit us up if you want to get involved. ReFi is for everyone. How's it going, bro? Same color t-shirt 2 weeks in a row.
What up? How we doing today, John?
Oh man, full of bliss, full of joy, ready to get into things. It's a great pleasure to enjoy another hour with you, man. Yeah, it's exciting stuff. We're kicking off in such good momentum, man. How are you this morning?
I'm great. I mean, I'm feeling like ready. I am just so excited to dive into like just what we have in store for today. You know, really getting to the heart of what is ReFi. You know, I feel like we've talked a lot about it. There's a lot of ground we've covered. We've got, you know, an amazing set of speakers, and I'm really glad we're taking the chance now to be like, hey, we talked about this thing. What is it? Let's break it down. And I think that's what we've got in store for today, right?
Yeah, man, that's gonna be great. Let's dive into it. Before we do so, I think it was nice what we did last episode, just giving listeners a chance to arrive wherever people are, in their car, driving to work, washing up the dishes, going on a walk. Wherever you are listening today, just tune in and give your attention to this space. So, what is ReFi? I think it's a great question. There's so much abstraction, there's so much complexity. But if you had to take a swing, like one sentence, what is ReFi, Simar?
You know, to me, ReFi is an exploration into how we can redesign money to be in greater harmony, to be in harmony with the earth.
I like that. It's really similar to something I often espouse, which is, redesign money to heal the earth. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the interesting concepts is like you say, okay, but what about people? And I love the sort of evolution of consciousness that emerges as you dig into climate science and recognize that actually we're not separate from the earth. Mm-hmm. And we are an integral part of it. It's a part of us. We cannot really understand ourselves or life on Earth without viewing this as a system as a whole. And so I think it would be really fun to unpack this concept of, how do you redesign money to be in harmony with the Earth? I think one of the best vehicles in my mind for us to do that is to start to look at like, what is money? Because that was one of the greatest unlocks that I had when entering into this space, was looking at this thing that has really won out of every nation throughout all of history. The one shared myth that has sustained is money. Mm-hmm. And when you actually start to look at it as a shared myth, as a shared story, it becomes so powerful. And then you can really start to understand what ReFi is when you view it in that lens. So using that as a starting point, like what would you say is money? How did it evolve? What's the origin?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. And I just realized there's a fun play on words with ReFi too. You know how like you redo something? I think, we're in this process of ReFi, which is, we get a chance to redo and rethink about, just imagine from the ground up, I think, how we think about our economies and our financial systems and so on and so forth. And, to what you just said, it starts with what is in truth a story, money. There's a book called Sapiens by Yuval Harari that I think, does a really good breakdown in at least some of the earlier human process of evolution. And one of the things that, he talks about is this idea of there's a subjective reality and then there's the intersubjective reality. And if you think about it, right, you have your experience of being human and I have my experience of being human. And it's useful to have agreements that we can agree to do things and co-create together in the world. And that's where money really evolved as a way of, hey, here's something that I can create that is of value. And there might be something that you can create that is of value. And how, when we start to take a larger number of people across societies, communities, tribes, start to dictate and create a mechanism for the flow of value. Me being able to create something that then you're able to receive, and then vice versa, in a way that we're all able to get what we want. And that's where money really came up as a fiction, as a way, as a currency that allowed us to flow value that we could create for one another. And one of the things that, we talked about is that I think in that initial inception and conception of money, we were primarily looking at the human to human level without acknowledging or accounting for where the things that we're creating with come from. So for example, when if I needed wood for fire and you went to, a tree near you and you cut it down, there is no method for, accounting for or giving back to the tree and the forest that provided the tree that then created the wood. I might pay you for your time, but there's this element of, so far in the story of money, nature and natural capital and resources around us that we use have been unaccounted for and excluded.
Totally. And I think,
go for it.
And the people that depend upon those assets as well,
Exactly.
that kind of second order consequence. And so, I like that you step back to Sapiens. That was a major evolution in my own thinking, to just view everything as a story. Corporations are a fictional construct.
Exactly.
Nation states are a fictional construct. Money is a fictional construct. Like, we have created this reality through language that allows us to work together and coordinate and get our basic needs met. But so many of these things are just belief systems. And so as you move away from the barter system where the shoemaker was trading, however many shoes for however many chickens, you recognize it's inefficient. And, money as a currency provides, store of value, something that somebody can hold in their house and accumulate over time, save over the winter and begin to spend in the spring and summer. And it provides a standard unit of account such that it's easier to for the shoemaker and whoever's rearing chickens to trade with each other without having to like cut a chicken in half or in quarters or manage those awkward divides. And also the kind of medium of exchange that allows people to trade more efficiently and effectively.
Exactly.
And I think that the interesting thing for me as you start to unpack some of these things is like, currency was backed by oftentimes the order of the time, the nation state. And, there's this concept of like currency being backed by gold and reserve of some precious metal, which is, effectively a story of scarcity. It's like, this is precious and it's scarce and it's limited in supply. But actually, like, as I read into the history of money, like so many of the earliest currencies and coins weren't actually, a one-to-one representation of a particular precious metal. It was just a thing that, the ruler of the time could stamp their image and their seal on and say, this is legit, this is backed by us. And, this is backed by also violence, in effect, which was the military power enforcing this rule and control. And so these are really strong things that kind of hold people in place. But I think there's some really interesting underlying concepts, both what you mentioned around natural capital, the physical, raw, finite resources that are often destroyed in the process of exchanging value, the nation state and the role that the nation state plays. What else is coming up for you as we unpack the story of money?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to reiterate that, like, it is a story. And as humans, we are capable of the stories originate from us, from our own imagination. So, I think with that, just recognizing, like, we created this, we created a particular reality, in which money was, sometimes backed by natural, sometimes backed by things like gold, some, oftentimes just, at this point, even for example, the United States dollar, just backed by the government, and often sort of like, the sort of threat of violence or the fear-driven approach of like, great, like, this is legal tender because we say it does, and if you don't use it, we will we will enforce and, in some way, shape, or form, and collect taxes have been another big part of it. And I think
in the form of that currency,
exactly,
totally.
Right, which has been a part of like establishing economic power. But one of the things that I think is also important to introduce within this concept is the notion of interest. If you kind of think about a sort of, if you have a monetary supply, which is, let's say, for example, accounting for some form of value, and you introduce a mechanism like interest, which is, again, credit has its place and is valuable, but with the introduction of interest, you create what we call, I feel like, a growth imperative, to satisfy the return of basically of interest on a principal of money that, is given to you, you have to grow the money supply. And so how do you grow the money supply? Well, great. You need to create new goods and services, and those goods and services come from our natural resources, our community resources, our social resources, and so on and so forth, such that even if our economy is growing and new goods and services are being created, what's being unaccounted for is the cost of the things that are not accounted for in the system. The things that, for example, don't have money to pay for things that they want to, for example, forests don't have money to pay for the things that they need to be taken care of. They're seen in this, what is often a very unidimensional one-way flow of value creation, which is we go from natural capital to, so on and so forth, to great goods and services. And that is the, it's like fire burning, it's a one-way reaction. And we're starting, and so far the entities that have had control over the creation, the distribution of money have been centralized entities, have been governments working with banks. And so you can kind of see, we talk about the story of money, for the most part, those that have been in power, governments, institutions, so on and so forth, that have dictated what we value as a society, how it gets compensated and how it gets rewarded, and like really being the intermediary in the flow of societal value. And I think, we're at the point now where things are starting to change, and we can start to begin to conceive of something new. And I feel like, John, you've got some great, insights here. What's coming up for you in terms of that next step and how we think about the internet?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the internet starts to democratize and bring power to the people in terms of the flow of information, first and foremost. As we look at, the people who controlled money, those were also people who controlled many other aspects of life. Mm-hmm. And, for a long time, religions were the kind of core organizing mechanisms by which people worked together. It's like, we believe in this shared story of, a single God, or, a multiplicity of deities, whatever it was. It allows people to just overcome their differences and work towards those shared goals, the shared values. And as in the similar way that the Gutenberg press kind of revolutionized access to information through books in people's own languages, the internet has done a similar thing, and it's been compounded by mobile phones in everybody's pocket, where you now have access to information being available to everyone, all around the world, in effect. And it's this supercharged flow of knowledge that has a double-edged sword. And as you look at money in the context of a global flow of information, you start to see this really powerful but also dangerous set of tools, where basically if you create an internet native money, you have this massive sandbox of experimentation where people have the opportunity to create money that really shouldn't be creating money. Like, Steve in his bedroom with a harebrained idea should not be creating, the United States reserve currency. Like, for sure, he's not credible, he's not qualified. But there's also a place to embrace this kind of new way of expressing value through money. And in the same way that the internet created an opportunity for people to be creators everywhere, to be storytellers everywhere, internet native money is allowing people to express values and express, I guess, a new story through new kinds of money. And that very principle is I think, incredibly challenging for many people to wrap their heads around. It's like, wait, what do you mean? You're having all these different people creating money, these new experiments. It's a pretty hard concept to wrap one's head around. But I really do think that is what blockchain fundamentally enables. Internet native money. That is, bottom up, grassroots approach. It's got, so much potential, so much risk. And this massive volatility of this market is expressing, the kind of lessons that the financial system have learned over hundreds of years, the speculation that has taken place over hundreds of years, and we're just compressing it into a really short time scale. What are your thoughts around that? Like, internet being the sandbox for a new form of money, a new story to be expressed.
I mean, I think it's really, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think there's a way in which, like, a part of, I think, the evolution of, our shared fiction, human consciousness is leading us to, I think, a point of individual empowerment, at an informational level. And also what is being enabled through blockchain is at an economic level as well, and I think with the creation of new currency and new economies, what we allow for is new forms of value to be accounted for in our system, and that's the beautiful thing about it is, like, we don't, you don't need, in the same way that the internet enabled forms of expression that you did not need permission from anybody to be able to express, you could now begin to, in a very similar way, value things that you don't need permission from any existing system to be able to account for. And I think, that's some of the, part of what we're seeing within ReFi is this, this, like, how do we include things that we find are valuable? And it's not, it doesn't require any adjustment from an existing system to be able to, account for that. So, I think there's a way in which there is a creative expression that's happening, not just, informational that was enabled by the internet, but now economic. And economic just simply meaning what we want to value, how we want to distribute that value, and what gets accounted for. And that's, and I think that's a part of, like, we think about regenerative economics and decentralized finance. Regenerative finance or regenerative economics is how we can, a way that we can be in relationship with each other, with our environment, in a way that is sustainable over the long run. And the decentralized finance piece of this is the tools of how we get there. It's how do we get there and enable and create the infrastructure to support that kind of a relationship. And I think that's, at least in my mind, part of what we're seeing. It's like, okay, how do we redesign money? Well, we need the tools to do so. And that's what decentralized finance and crypto and Web3 is giving us, is the tools to redesign money. Well, what are we redesigning money for? To be in greater harmony, to be able to heal the earth. And that, I think, is at the core of regenerative economics, and how we think about that. And everything else, we think about, we talk about things like planetary boundaries and what's happening at the environmental level. Those, in my mind, are all sort of creative constraints that we can begin to look at and be like, great, these are the boundaries that we can play with and how we play. And almost in some ways a signal back, right? A sort of response back from our environment of, hey, if we're not accounted for, the cost in so many ways to human life and beyond will continue to grow. So I know I feel like there's a lot tied in there, but I think, to your point, I think this is something where, even the internet is enabling us to host a podcast and transmit that to everybody around the world that's listening in, and something like blockchain is now going to be able to allow us to do things like offset while also hosting the podcast, and like actually, flow value to things that we want to flow value to in a way that couldn't be done before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to do that programmatically, such
exactly.
that, say, every time the podcast is published, 10,000 trees could be planted. These are things that are now being enabled by internet native money. Every time somebody downloads the episode, 100 grams of CO2 equivalent emissions have been, removed from the atmosphere through direct air carbon capture. Like, these are the kinds of things that internet native money is enabling. And so I think there's an interesting confluence of ideas that are surfacing in the climate space that are really influencing the way that we design money. In particular, 100%. The focus on greenhouse gas emissions as a new measure for planetary health and planetary balance or imbalance. I think has been a really powerful catalyst for change because, people have been decades rallying for an environmental awareness that says, hey, we've got a finite supply of water, a finite supply of land, a finite amount of trees, a finite amount of living species on the earth. If we don't want to end up in a concrete jungle with, a bunch of pigs, a bunch of chickens, a bunch of cows, and a bunch of sheep shitting all over the place, and steel structures that insulate us from everything. If we don't want to live in the matrix, like, we have to take care of this stuff, right?
Exactly.
And carbon dioxide allows, again, in a similar money fashion, a standardized unit of account to begin to incorporate some of planetary's, some of life's needs, right? And so I think there's this really interesting encapsulation of value occurring through climate consciousness that is starting to tether money back to the earth in a simple way that people can understand. Yeah. And it also has its limitations. Like, I don't want to espouse that carbon is this perfect store of value or unit of account. It's definitely not. There's so many flaws in the carbon market. But in the same way that, like, a standardized currency enabled a shoemaker and a poultry farmer to exchange value, we're now enabling a large corporation and a tree planter or somebody who's restoring ecosystems in an ocean to exchange value in a simplified and standardized way. And that concept of, like, a global currency that enables people who are polluting and enables people who are restoring, regenerating, to work together outside of the boundaries of the nation state is so incredibly powerful, because we have to recognize that these constructs of A, the nation state, but B, the corporation, they're flawed in the same way that money was flawed. Both of these constructs have frailties that have been exposed. And we have to redesign both of them. And Web3 is also providing the tools to do that in the form of DAOs, which I think many people are starting to wake up and recognize that, like, oh my gosh, in the same way that the limited liability corporation unlocked this whole new way of coordinating value, of getting stuff done. Totally. DAOs are next level. What's your thought on that in terms of organization structures to solve these challenges at a planetary level?
I'm like, I think that's exactly it. I think that, DAOs are an example of, like, a internet native organization that can have, when you think about corporations, they have a prescribed intention, which is to generate profit and return for its shareholders. And with DAOs, you can
on a quarterly basis as well.
On a quarterly basis, right? And so there's a way in which, like, what we're now, going back, like, even organizational empowerment, what we can set our intention to be whatever we want it to be, and move along that realm And so I think there's, and that's what I think the thing that's like really exciting is if we think about going back to like our, at the very beginning, we were talking about money as a story and as a shared fiction. Well, with programmatic money and the tools that we're building in Web3 and decentralized finance, we have the ability to create new agreement structures that can be executed programmatically, that don't need you and I to enforce them, and use human time to do so. So there's a way in which like we can actually now encode new agreements and new belief structures that we want to see into the organizations, into the money that we create to then espouse that, and I think, to your earlier point around carbon, I think it's an incredibly creative, there's something really beautiful to recognize that I think carbon and carbon credits are an example of how we are accounting for now something that previously was, for a lot unaccounted for and done in a very like, opaque and non-transparent and often with many intermediaries way. And we're enabling that to happen. And so I think part of what at least I'm really experiencing is like the creativity that's going into accounting for carbon and what we're seeing there can serve as a source of inspiration for what else we can create and start to do when we look at biodiversity and ocean and reforestation. And it's sort of a recognition of like, wow, actually we have a lot of creative power now, both at an individual level and an organizational level, to start to manifest and create a reality that feels more congruent with what we want to see and to be in greater harmony with. So I just like echo all of that. And it really feels like that's where there's this confluence of like, hey, we've been talking about climate, and that's been something which has been, we've been, seeing pop up more and more, donut economics, regenerative economics. And we now finally, I think as a global society, now have the tools to really execute and see that reality into form. And that's where we're at. And that's what we're here to explore.
Man, it's so fun. ReFi is such an incredible journey. I'm so excited to see new organization structures that allow people to work together and work towards generational timelines. Look beyond the quarterly cycle. Look towards the health of our ecosystems, the health of society, the stability of our climate, to overcome the failures of the nation state, to meet our needs, to meet our children's needs, and to meet our planet's needs. And I guess, I don't know, there's something in me that says like, this is what humans have always been working towards. And yes, we've made mistakes along the way, but we were almost like, there was almost something calling us towards this recognition of what it means to be human that says we're not separate from each other. We are not separate from the earth. We are utterly dependent. And we are all in this beautiful, mysterious dance of life. And we've got to figure out a new way to work together. And the internet enables us to do that. But time's running out. We got to go. Let's make this happen.
John, so I think what's happening here is that there's really two journeys that we're seeing. One of which is the inner journey and the other of which is the outer. The inner one being, can we all together expand our conception of self to include nature? To really go through the work of self-identifying and changing our notion of self to really expand. And at the same time, on the outer journey, now with the new set of tools, can we create a set of systems that reflect that new orientation of self? And it feels like we're now at the point where both of those are possible. It's happening. People are awakening and wanting something different. And we now have the tools to support and create that altered reality.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant way to frame it. And it helps me kind of make sense of this phenomena I found where so many people getting into climate have gone through this personal journey of growth where they recognize, actually, there's so much more to life. I think COVID has shaken a lot of our value systems and what we think we value. And then we recognize, oh my gosh, when I'm separate from my neighbor, from my friends, from my family, I really suffer. And when I'm separate from nature, I really suffer. And the monetary system that we've created that assumes we're separate is resulting in so much pain and suffering and cannot survive. Like we cannot last with this many people built in this system. And so I think it's been a really fascinating way to split it into the inner and outer journey, because it's kind of a tango of the two. And there's this, I don't know, like interesting hurdle of people recognizing these tools are ways to express this new way of thinking about who we are as people. Blockchain technology, smart contracts, decentralized finance. These are coordination tools that express a new system of values and a new conception of self. I totally agree. And yet there's just such a tiny portion of the world who really recognize the power of these tools. And the rest of the world seems to look from the outside, not really sure what to make of this whole space. There's these obstacles that get in the way. The first, I don't know, that comes to mind, what for you? Like, what are the main reasons that prevent people from recognizing the power of these new tools?
And part of this is, I think, an understanding of what the tools are and what they create in our ability to now create a different set of systems. And, one of the key things here is that we've had different streams of technology advancing up until this point. Our ability to track and measure, through things like drones, through things like LiDAR, through computer vision, our ability to now see what we haven't been able to document or account for before. And at the same time, one of the things that's really key, and we've talked about this, right? But, one of the things that I think blockchain really enables is visibility and resilience. It allows for everybody to see what's going on and what is being valued within an open ecosystem in a way that's far more resilient, in a way that's far more secure, such that, if we're thinking about designing a new system, we need to be able to know, great, are we doing the things that we want to be doing? When I make a transaction, if I purchase something, are there trees being planted on the other side? Right now, there's a huge degree of trust in a set of many intermediaries that is the case.
Yep.
And, we're now at the point where we're beginning to see what's possible, and I think, John, I feel like you have a really clear understanding of exactly what are the streams that, in particular to ReFi, we're seeing come through. I'd love if you could speak to those as well.
Yeah, I think there's this fascinating confluence of factors. In 2007, the term MRV was coined at a COP13 in Bali, Conference of Parties, which, there's thousands of these delegates from all these nation states trying to figure out how do we coordinate around climate change. And MRV was really a man-made construct that let us think about ways that we can coordinate a bunch of different actors around a story that enables people to trust one another, to uphold their commitments, and that we can have a system of accountability that uses social pressure, basically, to hold people accountable in the absence of an international law with punitive measures. Because there's not going to be like a legally binding contract that says, the global government is going to throw you in jail, United States of America, if you don't uphold to this. So the only thing we can do is to create systems that allow us to trust. And so MRV comes out in this time in 2007, followed by the Bitcoin white paper in 2008 off the back of the financial collapse. And it's fascinating to see this kind of conscious evolution producing these new coordination tools. And I very much see MRV and, distributed ledger as a similar expression and a desire to create a global coordination system that can allow people to have a fully transparent financial system that holds nation states, corporations, and individual actors accountable for what we all know we need to do to survive, right? We have the roadmap through Speed and Scale. John Doerr and their team have done fantastic work to map out hey, this is exactly what we need to do. These are the targets we need to hit by 2030, the targets we need to hit by 2050. And I think, the big aha moment is recognizing, what these underlying technologies actually are outside of this, this realm of confusion. And so I'd be curious for you to unpack, what is a blockchain in the simplest of terms? And then maybe we go through what is a smart contract, what is, the system of decentralized finance, so people can recognize that, these actually are the right tools to build this climate change coordination system on.
Yeah, that's all so great. And so, if we really start to bring things back down to a set of primitives and first principles, a blockchain, it's a set of, all a blockchain is an open database that is recording in a open and verifiable way a set of transactions. that are happening. And these could be anything. This could be me sending you money. This could be me planting a tree. It could be anything that can be codified into an agreement is a transaction. And so when we start to think about, okay, how do we design a new set of systems? Well, a new set of systems is going to require a different set of agreements than the ones that we've had so far. And that's what a smart contract is. A smart contract is a codified agreement that basically, we talk about this idea of state. You run a smart contract and the state changes. I might say, hey, I'm going to put funds into a smart contract, and those funds are going to go to a reforestation project. And on return of that reforestation project, something happens. Maybe I get an NFT, maybe something happens. So smart contracts are really, why are they smart? It's a smart contract. Contract is simply an agreement. The smart nature of it is that it's programmable. So you and I can write new smart contracts that are, again, open and verifiable. A way for everybody to see what exactly is happening such that we can all point to and know that when we have this set of inputs, this set of outputs we can count on and rely on in a way that is resilient. So we start to think about, okay, we need a new set of agreements to create a new set of systems. Great. Well, blockchain at its core allows us to move forward in time through and catalog a set of agreements that are happening and being performed and executed. You start to build that out now, right? We start to expand now that capability, and it's great. So things like we hadn't previously accounted for before. So let's say trees emitting carbon or reforestation or any of these sort of things, we can now see and trust, not in a way that we need to trust any centralized entity that they are doing what they say they're doing, but in a way that we can now verifiably through our own mechanisms see exactly what is happening where. And I think, on the MRV side, there have been a number of innovations separate from blockchain that are now really allowing for new capacity there. In particular, artificial intelligence and our capacity, particularly in deep learning and neural networks, to be able to look at and detect through computer vision what's happening. We've never before been able to make, sort of understand what we're seeing in such an algorithmic way before. Before, you would need to be able to manually have people looking at what's going on. So computer vision is at now an even unprecedented level of accuracy. We now also have things like satellites being able to, literally, again, more on the vision side, get windows into what exactly is happening. Internet of Things, sensors, our sensors capability have gone up. So we now have the tools technologically, literally, to detect the health of ecosystems, to detect how much carbon is being removed in a way that is incredibly cost effective and able to scale across the entire world. So now that we have a set of tools that we can use to actually measure, what's going on in our environment and in nature, blockchain is really what then allows us to bring that visibility into a new set of agreements that integrates this understanding into how we live, into how we show up. And that's really what I'm seeing between the two is great, we now can actually, on the MRV, measuring, reporting, and verification, we can now do that at scale in a cost-effective way, thanks to breakthroughs in technology, particularly on the vision side and on the sensor side in our ability to detect, right, and understand what's happening in nature. Blockchain creates the underlying foundational set of tools to create a new set of agreements such that we can record what's happening, verify what's happening, and start to allow for new flows of value and new flows of economic systems to begin to appear, and that's really what I see. It's blockchain provides the backbone, and the nervous system that the MRV and all the advances that we're seeing there allow us to get visibility into. That's really what we're codifying into a new set of agreements, but the blockchain really provides the scaffolding to allow that to scale, to be resilient, to be secure, and to be borderless, because that's the world that we're living in. Blockchain knows no geographic boundaries. And more we're seeing that's the reality that we are here to live in. It's that one that includes an entire world, and everybody in it as a part of a natural set of ecosystems that we all live in.
And I think the key thing to emphasize around the borderless nature is that, the blockchain is being secured by a bunch of validators all around the world who provide some resistance towards censorship and coercion from state actors.
Exactly.
Because the challenge of coordinating COP every year is each nation state has a really complex web of interests. And the kind of game theory behind fossil fuel emissions is like, there's a lot of incentives to defect and use fossil fuels when you're not supposed to, because it's cheap fuel and it's readily abundant. And, so much development in the West has been catalyzed by the presence of this cheap fuel, because it fails to account for the true cost of burning it. And I think this idea of saying, do you agree that nation states and corporations have interests which are at odds with the health of the planet? I'm pretty sure everyone would say yes. We have quarterly reporting cycles. We have profit mechanisms that fail to account for social costs, environmental costs, ecological costs. And we have nation states which have democratic systems that, are being gamed actively, all the time. And people are trusting less and less. And I think I would just give a call out to all the people out there who are frustrated by the lack of action at a nation state level, the lack of action at a corporate level, and say, if you believe in the human potential, lean into this idea of a new global financial system that supersedes and overcomes the failures of these old organizational models to solve these problems at a planetary scale. Because they were designed when we thought that actually it was all about my national identity. It was all about profit. And now we know it's not. We know that it's a human identity. It's a global consensus. And this is the system that will take us through to tomorrow. I really believe that.
100%. I mean, and the truth is, this is not we've seen this play out in history before as well. Even if you think about, for example, religion, and how in the past, right? Like, there have been, hey, we have your connection, let's say, to God, to source, to whatever, how do you start to saw over time movement towards individual empowerment at the human level. And I think that's in a similar way here. It's like our relationship to nature doesn't need to be governed by nation states and other powers that be. We can start to, reclaim our own empowerment as individuals and be able to show up with a new set of tools that allow us to live in harmony with nature. It's empowerment at an individual level. And that's really what I think blockchain, at its core really enables. It's saying, hey, great, where you needed to trust somebody else to do something before, you now have a set of agreements that everybody's, again, verifiably able to execute in a way that you're able to now free up energy, informational energy, decision-making energy, all of this energy, because things are moving now in a peer-to-peer way, such that it's resilient against bad actors, right? And you can actually visibly, and that's what I think it's so key here of, we've seen work before, but what's been lacking is that transparency. It's that visibility into what's happening at each level. And is each person fulfilling what they are intending and saying they're going to do? And that introduces a huge amount of overhead. Carbon credits in private markets being sold at 50% markups because, it's like unclear how they're even originating or what's happening or whether even the forests exist. And that value chain is what we're going to see collapse in ReFi. I can now buy carbon offsets to know exactly, what projects, where is the land, and not just trust that it is there from 2008 or a decade ago, but be able to see right now, right here, what's going on and what is the impact that we're having.
And to release funds according to what's happening on the ground in intervals of 5 days as opposed to 5 years.
Exactly.
I think this is really, really the power here. And so there seems to be a lot of energy going into the carbon market side of ReFi. I would say 80-90% of projects in the refidao.com directory site seem to be around carbon. And I think there's good reason for this fascination because off the back of MRV, we had constructs like the Clean Development Mechanism, RED+. There are all these again, coordination tools that we're creating to allow value to flow from, one place to another in order to, reduce future emissions and remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And carbon's kind of like an interesting unit of account because it's a bit more measurable than some of these other environmental, planetary health measures. But as a lot of people know, there are so many problems with the existing voluntary carbon market. And it really does seem like public blockchains are fantastic tools to prevent, double counting. They're fantastic tools to increase efficiency, transparency, and to make something that's liquid for and accessible, such that anybody can deploy capital towards impact. And I think like this is going to be a really fascinating kind of tension of the worlds as we see the likes of Vera and Gold Standard, who've been doing this hard work for decades. We have to give them credit that this voluntary carbon market wouldn't be here without them.
Exactly.
Coming up against these new coming actors like Toucan and KlimaDAO and Open Forest and Flow Carbon. Like there's so much innovation and desire, and now we're seeing actors like Gainforest provide satellite imagery and audit carbon credit issuance in Vera to say this plot of land has been defined in this credit, and actually it's being deforested, even though it was sold as a avoided deforestation credit. And I can see that as being a really terrifying insight for the legacy carbon market to say like, oh my gosh, people are going to stop trusting us. But the reality is we need this level of accountability to put trillions of dollars of capital into protecting nature, into removing carbon from the atmosphere, into decarbonizing the grid, into electrifying transportation. And so I'm really hopeful that we can all lean into the right tools to say, yes, 100%. We need people on the ground with smartphones taking photos and videos of stuff what's happening. We need remote sensors taking data samples. We need drones. We need satellites. We need this infrastructure on public ledgers to be able to coordinate this capital flow, because we've got 7.5 years left.
That's it. Yeah. And I think, that is so articulately said. All of those things that you mentioned have been technologies that have been in the making now for decades. Everything from smartphones to every single person now being empowered to be able to sense things, know what's going on, internet connectivity, satellite imagery, all of that. So it's like we have the tools now to actually reliably document what is happening to our environment and to our nature. And now to actually begin, again, to really efficiently integrate that in to how we live, so such that it's so easy. And I think there's a lot of great actors in this space of great, like we can calculate your carbon footprint, and be able to and like automatically in a way that doesn't have as much psychological overhead, offset it, And so that's where I think we're seeing so much happening. We're seeing many projects come about. We're seeing disruption in how things have been done before in a way that is open and accountable. I feel like, John, you're probably seeing this on the ground in ReFi DAO, with some of the pillars that I know you have like mentioned before, but what are you seeing now, coming back to even more specifics? Like, what are you seeing on the ground? What are the kinds of areas that we're seeing innovation happen in?
I wrote this article a while back called What is ReFi, and introduced this concept of 3 pillars where we saw so much energy around the carbon market. Yes, it's a poor proxy of planetary health, but it's easier to measure. And that really seems to be trying to stabilize the climate. But there's this like natural evolution that moves from carbon towards biodiversity, clean water, clean air, just looking at all of the other measures of planetary health, which yes, may be more difficult to measure, but yes, are also incredibly valid. And so some of the early pioneering projects that we're seeing on the ground, using stuff like DNA samples and audio samples to be able to create inputs of data to figure out what is the biodiversity in this set of water, what is the biodiversity in this sample of soil, and using different technologies to create more informed opinions about how you can measure planetary health as a whole. And I think my hope is that we can really lean into that ecosystem of experimentation around how do we actually restore these ecosystems? How do we restore and value life as a whole? Because it might be a 5-10 year innovation curve, but it's so worth it. Because we can imagine, like, what are penguins worth it to us? What are flamingos? What are rhinos? What are butterflies worth? What are bees worth, right? Like, you could try and quantify the economic value of these living systems, but we're always probably going to get it short because this is a complex system. And I think my heart is that we can really value life, above and beyond what we can currently understand, because man, we're losing it fast. Like, we've lost something like 50% of all species in the last, 40 years. And I don't know about you, but I really don't want to live on Earth in a concrete jungle with pig shit and chicken shit and cow shit. And no nature, man. That sounds horrifying. And I think the last logical conclusion of the move from carbon to biodiversity and ecosystems is from biodiversity and ecosystems towards human health and society and social justice as a whole. Because as you recognize, like, oh, we're actually just a part of this ecosystem. We're not separate from it. And maybe the reason why we've got these cascading crises in the first place is the way that we've treated one another.
Yeah.
And the way that we've divided ourselves from others and accepted and become okay with the suffering of our neighbors and, you know, people that we call foreign unto us. So I think there's so much around universal basic income. There's so much around, you know, providing a continuous funding platform for people all across the world to have the same level of opportunity and to use the power of the internet, you know, to join in this mission, to redesign money, to heal the earth, to live in harmony. Like, we need everybody on board. It's not going to work with just, you know, a handful of Silicon Valley tech folk. We need people in the global majority in order to make this crisis an opportunity that we look back and say, yeah, that was it. That was the turning point.
Gosh. Yeah, man. So beautifully said. And it's one thing I feel like just to emphasize, even just restate, you know, I feel like we're talking about, and we've brought this up as a theme, but this story of self, you know, the sort of idea of separation. And, you know, I think the truth is, like, it is such a big part of that sort of shift in how we view ourselves and how others is a big part of this. And how we then create a new set of systems that reflect that, you know, the different view is also critical as well, you know, and both are happening. But I think it's just, you know, I just want to, like, I know we've brought it up before, but just to, like, because it really feels like if we bring that same consciousness of how do we solve the problem, how do we extract value, we'll be playing whack-a-mole. We'll be solving a problem here, and a different problem will show up that we'll just continue to go up against. And so I think that's really where it's like, great, longer term, we need to focus on the problems that we have immediately at hand, 100%, and bring the technologies to innovate on them. And what's going to really propagate the long-term shifts is that collective coming together. It's not one person's job. It's not one company's job. It's not one project's job. It's going to take all of us to see this through. And every single person who's listening, every single person that's a part of ReFi, every single person that's here in the world, what we are talking about touches everybody. And it's going to take everybody showing up to the game for us to be able to see this through.
Totally. And, you know, we'll be happier because of it.
We will.
We'll live more meaningful lives through the process. And I cannot emphasize that enough, that, you know, the science of well-being, the psychology of happiness really does reiterate this transition away from all of the behaviors that a separate self facilitates, right? By saying, I'm separate from you, Simar, I'm separate from the earth. I'm just here to accumulate wealth, status, and then I die, and then it's done. That story leads to, you know, people trying to accumulate a lot of money, people buying nice things, people, you know, getting their physical desires met through whatever sensory stimulus, drugs, alcohol, you know, you name the flavor. And what we see is it doesn't make us happy. We're on this hedonic treadmill that has diminishing returns, that the more that we have, the more that we want, and the more we need, and the more emptiness we feel in ourselves, and the more our brain chemistry makes us a slave into the world around us and says that we don't have enough. We are not enough.
Yeah.
And so I think this really profound realization is happening, that the evidence is supporting, actually, hang on a second, when we look to the world around us and say, what if I invest in my relationships? What if I invest in acts of service, in gifts, random moments of kindness? What if I really stop to cherish this moment with my friend and absorb the beauty of this sunrise? What if I take the time to exercise and go on a walk and enjoy nature?
Mm-hmm.
What if I just give money away? All of these small things that really relinquish this scarce sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
It makes us happy. It makes us so much more fulfilled, and it's lasting. It reverses that hedonic treadmill. And suddenly the smallest things can give us incredible satisfaction and leave us with this sense of fulfillment that lasts. And of course, we're humans. We undulate. We have needs. We're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But I think, everything is pointing in this direction that there is a more beautiful world on the other side of these crises. We don't need to create another war story. We don't need to have another enemy to rally behind. We can recognize this is an opportunity to be truly alive like we've never been before. And Web3 gives us the tools and the culture and the values to do it. It's not the end all be all. We need so much else as inputs, but that nation states aren't going to do this. And corporates aren't either. This is up to us. We got to organize. Let's go.
Yeah, dude. Wow. Yeah, it's so true. And I think in that realm of like that expansion, it's like everybody's on their own journey and everybody's at a different part. And I think part of our work here through ReFi is protecting what we do have. All that we do have in the world, there's so much here. It's like protecting it. And then from that place, being able to expand into a world that is more beautiful, more meaningful than we could have ever even imagined. Because that's what happens when everybody shows up for each other, with each other, as a whole. And it's, it's like, that's what we really want. We want to belong. We want to belong to ourselves. We want to be at home in our bodies. We want to belong to the world and, to this, to like everything that we've created. And I think, we're recognizing that like in that story of self, keeping everybody separate, what we've really done is like, great. You have a lot of people with a lot of things and a lot of material wealth, but that which is immaterial is priceless. And that's what really makes us human. That's what makes us different from, something, a robot or a machine. It's like capitalism is predicated on the division of labor such that everybody's a cog in a machine. But we're at a point now where we can stand for something different. And so, it's like, and I think that's where it's like, we've talked about this in the last episode, but like, that's where ReFi is really, I do feel like it's really this place where there's so many different tributaries of thought, of technology, of spirituality, of just like different streams coming together into this beautiful ReFi orb that is sitting right behind your head. It's multicolored, it's multidimensional. It's holding the whole, it's got all of us, and it's going to be, this beautiful melting pot of everything we have to offer. And it's like, I don't want to take away from like the specifics of the challenges that we immediately have ahead of us around carbon and decarbonizing, like electrification and all of that. And it's like, it's really, I think, holding both. It's like, great, this is an inner journey that we're like in the external, tackling what's at hand, protecting what we have, and leveraging the innovation that we've had all these years to recognize that we can now create a different world.
For future generations. And I think those future generations are recognizing this, that, hang on a second, I don't want to be a part of this world, but I don't know where to fit. I don't know where to join. And that rebellious spirit that says, yes, we've designed a monetary system that is broken. It's growing, GDP is going up, but all of nature is being destroyed in the process. Society is being destroyed in the process. There's a cost to this system. And if we can create a new system that says, yes, as the economy grows, as productivity grows, we can restore what we need to survive. We can restore ourselves. We can restore the soil. We can restore our oceans. We can restore societies in the process. Then we won't be obsessing so much about all the stuff that we have in our closet, in our garage, on our balance sheet. Maybe we'll recognize actually life is so much more rich because look at what we've always had and what we just forgot, the beautiful things in life that don't cost anything. And I think I'm really hopeful that as we begin to organize in these kind of local grassroots events in ReFi Spring all over the developing world and beyond, that we can see, a kind of Extinction Rebellion size mobilization that isn't rooted in anger and isn't rooted in a war story, but something that's rooted in this beautiful opportunity to create something new and invite other people in, and not say you're the enemy, but to say like, hey, this is the world that we know is possible. Come join us.
Yep. I love that. John, I know you have a son in the other room. When he, let's say now, and maybe when he grows up, what would you want, if you had to articulate what is ReFi, what would you say to him?
Oh man, my son loves fire engines and tractors and combine harvesters, so he'd probably have a hard time understanding that fossil fuels are bad at this stage. But yeah, he also loves nature. I think I might say, yeah. That's a good question. Yeah, I think maybe it's like, it's a way of being that really values everything and everyone that you truly care about and that you really need to survive. And it doesn't leave anyone out of your heart. It doesn't say all of you are in, but actually all of you are out.
Wow.
And so I think my son would get that.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. Yeah. It's like, hey, this thing you feel right here, this heart, it's making space for everything in it so that it's all valued. We have this unique privilege of being here at this moment in time. When your son grows up, what is your wish for what ReFi could become? When you talk to him and he's an adult and he's looking at, great, like this journey that we've been on, what could ReFi be, and what its significance is?
Yeah, I think in the same way that the Enlightenment age gave rise to a new class of thought and a new expression of human potential, that, both of my boys, Ruben and Jesse, could look at ReFi as a renaissance of true regenerative spirit and thought and culture that not only values a certain, not only values life, but also acts in ways that reflects those values with deep integrity. And I think in the same way that our current society is canceling people out and dividing everybody and pushing people away and fighting wars and creating boundaries, that ReFi would be a space where everyone is welcome, any thought is valid, and that it's about bringing people together and taking care of the earth, taking care of ourselves. But that this would be, the financial system that sustains his future, that he can live with confidence and plan to have children and plan to invest for generations, knowing that it's not all going to go away because we failed to value what mattered most.